Hello everyone, and welcome back to the latest episode of Why the Hell Do We Care? I'm your host Randall Bahamut, and today we are covering quite a few officers from my favorite Dynasty Warriors faction, Wu. So let's dive right in with Dingfang. Dingfang's date of birth is unknown, but he joined the cast in Dynasty Warriors 7. In 7, his primary role is to be a player character to fight against during Jin's campaign. He almost kills Zhuge Dan at the Battle of Dongjing, acts as reinforcements for Zhuge Dan's rebellion, and participates in Wu's invasion of Hefei's castle, where he managed to save the Wu commander Zhuge Ke. In 8, he got more of a presence in the earlier battles as far back as Sun Ce's campaigns. He is a man with a terrifying presence and yet speaks like a poet, comparing actions to beautiful things in nature, with lines like the first zephyrs of summer, I feel fresh as a daisy. Now let's see how good his wrestling skills are. Dingfang is a power type that loves to wrestle. His S-string is a bit short range, but this is mitigated by his power typing. His charge attacks are pretty much all throws with the exception of his C1 EX attack, which is a guard breaker to grenade throws. This really makes him effective against officers since pretty much none of his attacks are blockable. His C4 and C6 involve him using his enemies' bodies as a weapon, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. His R1s hit hard, but are fairly forgettable in my opinion. It's mainly just dashing while on fire. His Musou is great for clearing crowds, but isn't that effective against officers. His passive is Power, which boosts other power types and again is handy if you like those guys. Overall, Dingfang is a pretty solid officer killer. He suffers a bit in crowd clearing, but his C6 can cover that. XiaoQiao's date of birth is unknown, and she got her playable debut in Dynasty Warriors 3. Xiao, along with her sister Da, were known as the two Qiaos and were said to be very beautiful. She was the wife of Zhou Yu, and it was said that Zhuge Liang told Zhou Yu that Cao Cao wanted to steal her away and make her his wife in order to get Zhou Yu to approve of the alliance that led to the Battle of Cherbi. Most of her story contributions focus around events her husband was a part of. She's the energetic and bubbly side of the Qiao sisters, who does her best to keep the army's morale up and is usually the first one to charge headlong into a problem. Now let's see how she wields her giant fans. XiaoQiao is a speedy technique type. Her S-string is fairly quick, but it is short range and not very damaging. Her charge attacks are alright, but her C3 EX attack deserves some recognition for the huge flaming beam she shoots out. Her R1s are fairly meh, with a butt slam, yes really, for her ground one, and a multi-hitter for the air. Her Musou reminds me of one of Ken's super moves from Street Fighter, where he does the spinning flaming kicks on someone into the stratosphere. Her passive is Fortune, which improves the quality of weapons and items. Not sure how much it improves it by, but I usually take Fortune passives along when I grind for accessories. Overall, she is okay, and her passive is very useful when item hunting. Although I try to keep stats out of this, I will state she has a pretty low attack score, so that can be a bit of a problem. It is unknown when Sun Shangjiang was born, but she was one of the original Dynasty Warriors from the very first game. She is the younger sister of Sun Ce and Sun Quan, and was the wife of Liu Bei, which only recently became a focus in the games. She fights alongside her family in many battles, although odds are pretty good she didn't actually participate in the fighting in reality. In the recent games, her main focus is on her marriage with Liu Bei and how she takes it when Wu and Shu clash after Wu kills Guan Yu at Fang Castle. She is generally portrayed as a tomboy who loves her family and enjoys fighting alongside them. Now let's see how she wields her bladed wheels. And yes, that's what they are actually called in-game. Sun Shangjiang is a pretty agile technique type. Her S-string is pretty quick and hits in a wide area due to her huge weapons. Her charge attacks are pretty varied and have good range, although her C4 and C5 are very similar. The only real difference between the two is C4 hits back and C5 hits up. Her C6 EX attack follows up a long-range throw with an equally long-range flaming kick for some pretty nice damage. Her ground R1 is a pretty nice fire attack that hits a lot of times and juggles for a bit. Her air R1 is another dive attack. Her Musou is a nice unblockable attack that hits surprisingly hard, and the last hit knocks back everything around her. Her passive is Impulse, which boosts everyone's movement speed, which is a nice convenience, but as I've said before, a good horse can take the place of that. Overall, the student tomboy lives up to her family legacy of kicking ass. Seimei Abe, or as he is better known as Abe Noseimei, was born in 921 AD, and this is his first appearance in the series. He was a renowned onmyoji in the Heian period and foretold the future for the imperial court. Many legends around Abe Noseimei focus around him using his intelligence and courage to battle supernatural forces and dispel evil spirits. His soldiers at Ueda Castle are Shikigami, which are beings summoned or created from paper constructs with his magic. Now, let's see how well he can put that magic to use. Abe Noseimei is a wonder type with quite the magic touch for it. His initial hits on his S-string are meh, but then he turns his Shikigami huge for a massive range boost. His charge attacks are elementally based. C1 is ice, C2 is fire, C3 is lightning, C4 is wind, and I think C5 is sleigh. This gives him quite a bit of variety with status ailments of all flavors in his attacks. His ground R1 is not a throw, even though it acts like one, and his aerial R1 can hold off a large group of enemies, although it hits randomly in an area. His Musou is an interesting mobile area attack that can be nice to take down groups. His passive is Resurrection, which will bring the team back from death once per battle, which is pretty freaking awesome. It has saved my ass a couple times. Overall, he is a really strong character, and his passive lets him get up and keep on fighting even if he somehow loses. It is believed that Kai is based off of the daughter of Narita Ujinaga and got her debut in Samurai Warriors 3 and even got on the box cover. She started as a recruit in the Hojo army and serves Ujiyasa Hojo. She participates in the Hojo's early fights against the Uesugi and serves the Toyotomi after the Hojo's fall. After Mitsunari's death, she joins Yukimura's resistance at Osaka Castle and either lives or dies depending on whose route it is. She is a tomboy and is even addressed as boy by her lord Ujiyasa. She also has a bit of a running gag about how she likes to fight bears, and her card in duel mode, Bear Killer, even continues that. Now let's see how well she wields her whip blade. Kai is a speed type and has an interesting weapon. She is a long attack string samurai warrior, and her S string starts out meh, but her weapon extends and gets a longer range as the combo goes on. She has a lot of charge attacks, but the standouts to me are her C7, which is an unblockable throw, C8, which is a pretty quick double explosion, and her C9 hits multiple times all around her. Her ground R1 doesn't do much damage, but it is a nice crowd control, knocking down everything in front of her, and her aerial hits in a pretty wide area from her above. Her Musou is like a continuous version of her C8, so it isn't bad. Her passive is Recovery, which speeds up an active member's life recovery. I have mentioned this passive before and still not that impressive. Overall, she is a pretty varied character that is easy to handle. She doesn't really stand out to me, but she can kick ass. Yoshihiro Shimazu was born in 1535 AD and got his debut in Samurai Warriors 2. In the games, he is a war veteran who has the nickname Devil Shimazu and is hated by Kinshio Tachibana for his clan slaying her father. He manages to win a victory against the Toyotomi army, but ultimately loses to the Toyotomi's superior resources and intelligence. After Hideyoshi's death, he joins with Mitsunari to battle the Tokugawa. In one of his endings, he turns the tide and wins the Battle of Sekigahara for the Western Army, and then turns right around and betrays Mitsunari, kills his supporters, and takes the land for his own. Shimazu is a bit of a daredevil and enjoys fighting on the losing side. Now let's see how he hammers heads like nails with his giant hammer. Yoshihiro is a power type who loves smashing heads with his long attack strings. His S string is pretty wide hitting but slow, so his power typing really helps him out there. He has a lot of charge attacks, and his C5 and C6 are really similar except for where they launch the enemy, with C5 launching them up and C6 launching them back. His C7 is an unblockable throw, and his C8 hits in a massive area of effect. His C9 is also a pretty good charge attack that travels a good distance. His R1s are alright, There are powerful hits, but nothing really noteworthy beyond that. His Musou caused massive eruptions where he slams his hammer, so it's a nice crowd clearer. His passive is stamina, which again is nice, but not reliable. Overall, he is very wide-hitting, so he can handle crowds very well. Now, this is a bit of a personal nitpick, but in his early appearances, I never felt like his hammer had any real weight behind it, and that always bugged the crap out of me. Thank you all for joining me in this final chapter roundup. Next time, we dive into Chapter 2 and start making headway in taking down the Hydra and the Demon Army. I am your host, Rihanna Bahamut, and I hope to see you all there.